The council chamber of 12 shimmered with the polished arrogance of 1,000 conquered worlds. Light refracted through crystalline domes, casting prismatic hues across the assembled delegates, each seated upon their raised thrones of alloy and bone. Power hummed faintly in the air, not from any device, but from certainty, the conviction that the galaxy's balance was firmly under their command. Admiral Vorkal of the Zell Confederacy stood at the center, his scales glinting with predatory confidence. His posture was one of ease, his tone almost languid as he addressed the assembly. The last human colony fell 3 rotations ago. Resistance collapsed within 6 minutes. Their orbital guns barely scratched our shielding. His thin lips curled into what, among his species, counted as a smile. They continue to believe fire and metal can stop evolution. Ripples of amusement rolled through the chamber. The insectoid Neth consul tapped his mandibles in approval. The gaseous orb collective pulsed in a flicker of blue light, their version of laughter. It was a room of victors who no longer feared challenge. Only one delegate sat in silence, Envoy Tilare of Venari Ascendancy, her pale features tense, her gaze fixed not on Vorkal but on the flickering hollow map of Sol. She spoke softly, though the voice amplifiers carried her words through the hall. Admiral, you said the colony fell in 6 minutes. You also reported 10% losses in your assault fleet. For civilization considered primitive, those are not negligible figures. Vorkal's grin thinned. Collateral adjustment. Their defenses were erratic. They aimed without coordination, barbaric, unrefined. He leaned closer, his reptilian eyes narrowing. You speak as if they matter. Tilare didn't flinch. I speak as a student of patterns. Every species we've conquered has folded in fear, pleaded for mercy, or sought refuge in treaties. Humans did none of these. They rebuild quietly. They vanish. You should wonder why. Murmurs spread, low and disbelieving. The Chancellor, a towering avian from the KRYL Dominion, raised a talon for silence. The Neri representative's fascination with this extinct species is noted. However, the Council cannot base strategy on superstition. He turned his beak toward Vorkal. Proceed with the next phase. The remaining human worlds are to be cleansed. Then Earth itself will be brought under observation. The decision passed without protest. None imagined resistance. None considered the possibility that humans were listening. 2 cycles later, Vorkal's fleet emerged from folded space into the Sol system, 1,000 warships gliding like obsidian leviathans. The Admiral admired Earth through his viewport, its oceans glimmering under the sun, cloud swirls whispering of fragile beauty. A quaint little sphere, he murmured. To think they crawled from that mud and dared challenge us. Admiral, said his first officer, a thin-limbed Zell named Kor, our sensors detect heat anomalies beneath the southern oceans. Possibly geothermal vents. Vorkal waved a dismissive hand. Geothermal, tectonic, whatever primitive toys they buried. Prepare the plasma barrage. Sir, there are also orbital fragments, satellites, but they're active. Then we'll deactivate them. Fire. Lances of energy shot toward Earth's surface. The display screens flared white, then black. The crew cheered. Cities were erased, continents illuminated like sunrise. But the cheering faltered when one officer stammered, Admiral, the energy readings, they're not dissipating. They're being redirected. Redirected. Before anyone could respond, every console aboard the flagship flickered. Lines of alien code cascaded across the interface. Systems rebooted themselves, ignoring commands. Communications scrambled into static. A voice, calm, steady, unmistakably human, filled the bridge. Unidentified fleet. You are trespassing in restricted space. Cease fire and withdraw. The bridge froze. Kor's frill stiffened. Is that pre-recorded? Vorkal growled. Patch through and identify the source. But the voice came again, identical in tone, now tinged with faint disapproval. This is your second and final warning. The Admiral slammed his clawed hand onto the control surface. I want all weapons at maximum. Half the displays blinked to black. The ship trembled, not from an impact, but from sudden emptiness. Energy reserves dropped to 0. Shields flickered out. Engines failed. A hush fell across the bridge. Kor whispered, Admiral, our core containment, it's offline. Across the viewport, several Zell cruisers imploded silently, folding inward like paper crushed by invisible fingers. No debris. No explosion. Just absence. Who dares? Vorkal began, but the lights cut out. A single transmission echoed through every ship simultaneously. Leaving so soon? The tone wasn't mocking, it was almost polite. The kind of calm one might use with a child who'd touched a hot stove. Then the comms died entirely. Vorkal's mind raced. Reboot the drives. Any route out of this system. Core's claws danced across the console. Every jump coordinate redirects us back to Sol orbit. We can't leave. The Admiral stared into the abyss outside the viewport. He felt, for the first time in his life, something alien to him, something he'd only ever seen in Prey. Fear. Transmit a distress signal to the Council. Already done, sir. Back in the Council chamber, the delegates watched their screens in disbelief as the Zell fleet's status icons blinked red, then vanished entirely. No explosions, no enemy readings, just void. The Chancellor's feathers flared in agitation. Signal interference. No, Chancellor, said Tilare softly. Annihilation. The room erupted in denial. Impossible. A trick. Zell technology cannot be undone by primitives. Tilare rose from her seat. You still don't understand. You attacked the one species that studied extinction and decided it would never happen to them again. A council aide stammered. Are you implying these humans planned this? That they? I'm not implying anything. Her voice cut through the noise like a blade. I'm observing that they didn't respond in rage or fear or desperation. They responded with procedure. That is far more terrifying. Vorkal's final transmission reached them minutes later, a scrambled visual, his reptilian features pale with shock. They were waiting, he hissed. They let us come. They let us shoot. Then they turned our own power inside out. The recording ended abruptly with static. The council sat in stunned silence. The Chancellor finally exhaled a rasping breath. It's one battle. They caught us off guard. We will regroup. Tilare folded her hands, her voice almost a whisper. Regroup if you like. But mark my words, Chancellor, this wasn't retaliation. This was restraint. The chamber darkened as the holofeed cut out, showing only the black void of soul space. For a long, unbearable moment, none spoke. In that silence, power shifted. It wasn't official. It wasn't voted upon. But every being in that room felt the truth settle in their bones. The era of dominance had ended the instant Earth answered. Tilare rose from her seat, the only sound her soft footsteps against the marble floor. The predators have woken, she murmured, and they are civilized now. Outside the chamber's vast windows, the stars burned quietly, innocent, unaware that somewhere between them, humanity had just stopped pretending to be prey. The council met again in emergency session, but the grandeur of the chamber now felt hollow, its walls echoing with unease instead of triumph. The air that once shimmered with superiority now carried a different weight, doubt. Screens hung like ghosts above the delegates, replaying the last moments of Vorkal's fleet. The static between frames sounded almost like screaming. Chancellor Arvane of the KRYLL Dominion, usually regal and composed, paced behind the central dais. His wings rustled with agitation. We have no proof the humans possess such capabilities. A single fleet loss could be due to cosmic interference, sabotage, and internal. Tilare interrupted softly. Interference does not rewrite energy patterns. It does not remove matter from existence. Her tone was calm, clinical, but her eyes betrayed a deeper realization. She wasn't warning them anymore. She was already mourning what was coming. A hologram flared to life in the center of the chamber. It was a transmission received just an hour prior. The image of a human woman, face half obscured by a reflective visor, appeared. Her voice was steady, unhurried. To the Council of 12, you have trespassed in Terran space and destroyed civilian lives. You will stand down and withdraw your fleets. There will be no negotiations on this matter. The hologram blinked out as suddenly as it had appeared. Arvane's feathers flattened. Was that an official transmission? The signature originated from Earth, Tilare said. No encryption traceable to any known faction. Pure, clean, untraceable code. Even our archives cannot decipher it. The Orv delegate pulsed in agitation. Then they are bluffing. No species could develop such mastery without trade, without sharing. Isolation breeds decay. Tilare turned her gaze to the swirling hollow map of human territories. Or evolution. Across the galaxy, sensors began detecting strange patterns, energy pulses that mimicked natural radiation, then folded out of existence before readings could be logged. Human colonies long thought destroyed lit up with signals. But no ships appeared. No broadcasts. Just presence. The kind of silent motion that made the universe itself feel watched. In the human command center buried beneath the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Helena Rains stood before a wall of tactical displays. Her uniform was unadorned, her hair tied back with utilitarian precision. Her eyes, gray and unblinking, watched the incoming Council fleets scatter in panic. Around her, the room hummed with low conversation and restrained tension. A young lieutenant approached. "Ma'am, Council communications are attempting negotiation protocols. They're requesting coordinates for diplomatic channels." Rains didn't look away from the screens. They attacked civilians, not soldiers. They forfeited diplomacy when they treated Earth like a training ground. "Yes, Admiral, but their reinforcements are predictable." She pointed to a map expanding across the stars, red trails marking warp signatures. "They think we'll counter at their vanguard. We won't." Another officer, older, scarred, leaned against the table's edge. "Ma'am, we could annihilate them now. End this in one decisive strike." Rains turned toward him and confirmed their worst fears, that humans are a contagion of destruction. Her voice softened, though not for mercy. "No, they need to understand what control looks like." The officer nodded reluctantly. In orbit, Earth's skies shimmered as hundreds of artificial satellites activated simultaneously. They weren't built for communication or surveillance. These were sentinels, silent sentries designed to mimic debris until called upon. Beams of invisible energy lanced through the void, each pulse mapping the fabric of folded space. Far beyond, in the neutral trade system of Drathis, a convoy of alien ships suddenly found itself surrounded by 12 Terran vessels. They didn't fire. They didn't even raise shields. They simply transmitted a message: "Please disengage from military alliance. You are too close to a restricted zone." The convoy obeyed, not from fear of destruction, but from the eerie certainty that defiance would mean erasure. Back in the Council chamber, panic had begun to replace pride. Reports flooded in, fleets disappearing without trace, factories locking down, planetary defense grids reprogrammed to broadcast human-coded warnings. The Orv delegate's voice crackled through its containment shell. "This is impossible. They cannot be everywhere." Tilare replied, "They're not everywhere. They're precise." Admiral Vorkal, scarred and hollow-eyed, appeared on a new transmission feed. His voice, once commanding, now carried a tremor. "You want proof? Watch this." He played a recovered data feed, grainy footage from his flagship moments before its destruction. The human voice could be heard clearly, not mocking, not emotional, merely announcing terms like an administrator recording a log. Then the feed froze on a single image, a small metallic object, hovering silently outside the flagship's viewport. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a drone. It was a recording beacon. "They sent one to every ship," Vorkal whispered. "They wanted us to remember." The chamber fell silent again. Tilare felt the temperature drop, though she knew it hadn't. "Admiral, what do you believe they intend?" He met her gaze through the hologram. "They're showing restraint." And after restraint, his jaw tightened. "I don't know." In the human command bunker, Rains watched the Council's panic transmissions in real time. Her aide, a quiet young analyst, spoke without looking up from his console. "They'll regroup, ma'am. They'll come again." "They will," she agreed. "They always do. But next time, they'll hesitate." Her tone wasn't one of satisfaction, but inevitability. We wanted peace. They wanted dominance. They made the mistake of assuming the two were opposites. Outside, the Atlantic shimmered under a full moon. A vast ripple spread across the water as submerged launch bays began to close, sealing the arsenal that had never needed to fire. Humanity didn't need to announce its return. The galaxy had already heard it, in silence, in vanished fleets, in the quiet precision of a civilization that had learned patience. The Council, meanwhile, devolved into chaos. Factions blamed each other, empires questioned their alliances, and panic replaced hierarchy. For the first time in centuries, the galactic order looked fragile. Tilare sat alone after the session adjourned, her hands folded before her, the hologram of Earth's blue surface spinning slowly above her desk. There was something hypnotic in its calm rotation, something terrible in its serenity. She whispered to no one, "You didn't build weapons to win wars. You built them to end the need for them. Across the void, Admiral Raines stood before a glass viewport overlooking the silent ocean. "They'll send everything next time," she murmured. Her aide hesitated. "Will we be ready?" Raines' reflection met his in the glass. "We already were." Far above, in orbit, the sentinels dimmed, returning to their dormant disguise as drifting wreckage. The stars looked peaceful again, deceptively so. But every pulse of light from Earth's surface carried a message the Council was only beginning to understand. The war hadn't ended. It had simply changed hands. And somewhere deep within the silence between worlds, the Predator waited, patient and awake. The Council of 12 no longer met in grandeur, but in fear. The chamber, once alive with color and ceremony, now felt like a mausoleum of pride. Holograms flickered unevenly across the vast room, painting faces pale with tension. No one sat comfortably anymore. Rank meant little in the shadow of a vanished fleet. Chancellor Arvain's voice cracked through the static. "We are being humiliated before the galaxy. Our fleets vanish, our communications are infiltrated, and the trade networks whisper of human dominance. We must respond, immediately, decisively." Vorkal stood at the center, his posture heavy rather than proud. He looked older, his scales dulled from sleeplessness. "You speak of response, Chancellor. Tell me, how do you fight ghosts? I've seen their ships disappear without energy spikes, without signatures. We fired into empty space, and space swallowed us whole." The room buzzed with overlapping fear disguised as anger. The Orv representative, a being of light and vapor, flared indignantly. "We are not helpless. Their technology may be advanced, but no civilization holds absolute power." Tilare spoke before anyone else could. "You still think this is about power? It isn't. It's about control. They aren't trying to destroy us. They're showing us how easily they could." Her voice carried no accusation, only a quiet finality that cut through the chaos. "They're teaching restraint, not demanding submission. And that's what terrifies you." Arvain snapped his wings open, feathers bristling. "Restraint? You call annihilating a fleet restraint?" Vorkal turned his cold eyes toward him. "Yes, because we're still alive." For a heartbeat, silence dominated. Even the background hum of the chamber seemed to fade. The Chancellor's beak clicked softly, words dying before they reached air. Tilare's gaze fell on the data streams swirling across her console, patterns of human transmissions, simple phrases repeated in hundreds of frequencies. None threatening, none angry, just constant reminders of boundaries. "They're not expanding," she said. "They're fortifying, preparing for the day we refuse to learn." A younger counselor, inexperienced and trembling, rose from his seat. "If they truly have such power, why not use it to rule? Why not demand tribute, territory, obedience?" Tilare met his question with weary clarity. "Because they don't want empires. They've outgrown them." Vorkal's claws tapped the metal floor. "And if they're done waiting?" The question lingered. Outside the council chamber, the galaxy churned in quiet panic. Dozens of allied empires began mobilizing, not under the council's command, but out of desperation. Massive fleets assembled along trade corridors, each commander hoping to prove their worth, or at least survive the coming storm. They called it Operation Cleansing Flame, a show of force intended to burn through Terran defenses and re-establish the natural hierarchy. When the plan was announced, Tilare had opposed it. Her warning echoed through the archives: "You cannot fight something that already understands you." She was ignored. Vorkal, against his own instincts, was ordered to serve as tactical advisor. His condition was clear: he wanted no command, only observation. Yet the council insisted. They needed his experience, or at least his fear, to lend the operation credibility. The fleet launched from a Virelian gate, 10,000 ships, a tidal wave of arrogance and desperation. Dreadnoughts from the KRYLL Dominion, plasma carriers from the Orv Collective, drone swarms from the industrial rack systems, all converged toward Sol. The sight was magnificent and absurd at once, like watching a mountain charge into a storm. In the command sphere of the lead dreadnought, Arvain presided over the operation with ceremonial calm. "We will strike first before they can retreat again," he said. His eyes darted toward Vorkal. "And this time, Admiral, there will be no restraint." Vorkal didn't answer. He watched the blue sphere of Earth growing on the horizon. It looked smaller than he remembered, fragile even. "You mistake their silence for weakness," he muttered. "That's how they win." On Earth, Admiral Helena Raines watched the same armada through orbital reconnaissance. Her officers murmured updates in low tones, but she barely moved. The data unfolded exactly as expected. "They've arrived," someone said unnecessarily. "Let them settle," Raines replied. "They'll think we're unprepared." "Ma'am, do we activate the defense grids?" "Not yet." Her eyes never left the screen. "The moment we react, we confirm their illusions of superiority. Let them breathe that in a little longer." Down in the subterranean command center, silence became its own form of communication. No one dared break it. They all knew what waited beneath the oceanic vaults and polar silos, technologies not designed for conquest, but for deterrence on a cosmic scale. Back in orbit, Arvane watched Earth through the bridge's panoramic glass, his tone almost reverent. So this is their home. All that defiance, born from this one small world. Vorkal's voice was rough. "Don't admire them. You'll need that awe when you beg them for peace." "Peace?" Arvane sneered. "They slaughtered millions of our soldiers. There can be no peace." Vorkal stepped closer, the glint in his eyes hollow. "That wasn't slaughter. That was warning." The dreadnought fleet aligned into combat formation. Engines ignited, forming a halo of red light around the planet. The assault countdown began. Every ship aimed toward Earth's atmosphere, weapons charged to saturation. And yet Earth remained still. No defenses. No visible fleets. Just one small blue world beneath the weight of their arrogance. "On my mark," Arvane ordered. "Wait," Vorkal said sharply. "If you fire now." Enough. The countdown hit 0. Thousands of plasma bolts lanced downward, carving fiery trails through the void. For a moment, the sight was breathtaking, pure destructive beauty. Then space rippled. The light bent. The stars themselves distorted, refracted, like reflections in disturbed water. One by one, the plasma trails froze mid-flight, suspended like sculptures. Arvane's beak twitched. What's happening?" Vorkal already knew. His voice was barely a whisper. "They let us come. Again." Every screen on every ship flickered to black. Then a calm human voice filled the comms, steady, emotionless. "Predator protocol engaged. Please remain stationary." The fleet trembled. Entire systems began shutting down. Artificial gravity failed. Crews floated helplessly in 0G as power drains cascaded through the armada. One dreadnought after another winked out, not in flame, but in silence. On Earth, Raines exhaled slowly. They didn't listen. Her aide, pale and silent, asked, "Shall we proceed with full termination?" Raines shook her head. "No. They need to see the consequence, not the extinction. Record everything. The galaxy will watch this later and understand." In orbit, Vorkal drifted weightless inside the failing flagship, watching as the Council's greatest fleet disintegrated around him. Arvane screamed orders no one could hear. The void absorbed them all. Through the static, the same human voice returned. "Hostilities concluded. Governance transfer will commence shortly." Vorkal closed his eyes. There was no sound, no heat, no light, only the infinite awareness that the war had already ended before it began. When he opened them again, Earth still hung before him, untouched, beautiful, and utterly. The silence after the annihilation was unlike anything the galaxy had ever known. It wasn't victory that hung in the air, it was realization. The kind that hollowed out pride and replaced it with something raw and undeniable. The war had ended, but its echo rippled across every world, every empire, every mind that had believed humanity was just another primitive species climbing toward the stars. On the fractured remains of a flagship Virelian's Wrath, Vorkal regained consciousness amidst floating debris and flickering emergency lights. His breathing was ragged, shallow. The cold vacuum pressed against the hull, whispering through fractures. He was alive, but only because humanity had allowed it. That truth burned deeper than any wound. Tilare's voice broke through the fading static on his communicator, calm but edged with awe. "Vorkal, they spared us." He looked out the shattered viewport at the motionless void. The fleet that had once blotted out stars was now gone, hundreds of ships dissolved into dust, others hanging lifeless in orbit. "No," he said slowly. "They spared the idea of us. There's a difference." Below, Earth glowed softly, its continents traced with light and motion. The world looked almost peaceful, but Vorkal could feel its pulse, a quiet intelligence watching, judging, choosing. Humanity wasn't celebrating, they were evaluating the galaxy's worth. In the command center beneath the Andes, Admiral Helena Rains stood before a translucent display showing the wreckage of the alien armada. Her face was pale with exhaustion, but her eyes carried a calm so absolute it unnerved her subordinates. General Wei approached, his voice low. The Council survivors are signaling distress. Should we recover them? Rains considered the question. Recovering implies compassion. Send retrieval drones, no crewed ships. We'll study their behavior before we decide what to do next. Wei frowned. You think they'll surrender? They don't understand surrender yet. That's why we'll teach them differently. She turned from the screen. The old galaxy taught obedience through fear. We'll teach evolution through consequence. Hours later, Vorkal and Tilare were brought to Earth, not as prisoners, but as witnesses. The facility they found themselves in was not a cell, but a marvel, a transparent dome beneath the ocean, surrounded by bioluminescent life. Machines hummed softly, not with menace, but with purpose. Tilare's fingers trembled as she touched the glass. They built all this while we debated whether they were worth contacting. Rains entered, flanked by silent guards. She didn't wear medals or symbols, only a black uniform with a single insignia, a spiral, representing humanity's continuum initiative. She studied her guests with quiet detachment. Do you understand what happened today? She asked. Vorkal met her gaze. We underestimated you. Rains shook her head. That's not understanding. That's regret. Understanding begins when you ask why we didn't destroy you. Tilare's voice was barely a whisper. Because you don't want to rule. Correct, Rains said. Empires are built to control. Humanity learned that control always decays. We don't control, we influence. We shape what survives. Vorkal frowned. And what if we refuse to be shaped? Then you'll fade, she said simply. Just like every species that confused dominance with progress. Outside the dome, a vast mechanical structure stirred, a living factory, embedded within the seabed. It pulsed with synchronized rhythm, processing alien wreckage into raw material. Not waste, not trophies, resources. Humanity was already turning destruction into creation. Tilare turned toward Rains. You're rebuilding the galaxy in your image. Rains smiled faintly. No. We're preparing it to survive itself. Her tone was not prideful. It was weary, like someone who had long since lost the luxury of emotion. As the conversation deepened, Vorkal realized something that chilled him more than defeat ever could. Humanity wasn't united by ideology or government anymore. They were unified by awareness. Every human he had seen, from the technicians to the guards, moved with the same purpose, spoke with the same quiet certainty. It was as if the entire species had become one mind, individuals synchronized not by force, but by shared understanding of their place in the universe. He finally asked the question that had haunted him since the first battle. What are you? Rains regarded him for a long moment. We were human once. Then the universe made us adapt. You've seen the result. Tilare stepped forward, her expression softening. And what happens to us? Rains looked out toward the glowing ocean beyond the glass. That depends on how your species reacts. The galaxy will soon receive a single transmission from Earth, a warning, not a threat. You'll return home and decide what to do with it. Vorkal's throat tightened. And if we choose war again, then you'll never choose again. The lights dimmed slightly as a low hum filled the facility. A holographic projection flickered to life, an enormous map of the Milky Way, marked with thousands of crimson points. These are the civilizations that prepared to strike us, Rains said. Each will receive the message within one cycle. The content is simple. She turned to face them fully. Stop attacking, or we stop pretending to be civilized. The words hung heavy, echoing in the water around them. Vorkal stared at her, realization dawning like dread. You don't mean extermination. No, she said quietly. I mean correction. The facility trembled softly as submersible drones ascended from the deep, carrying fragments of alien ships, their symbols still visible. Humanity wasn't hiding its power anymore. They were showing it, methodically, calmly, without hate. Tilare felt tears rise unbidden. You're not conquerors. You're guardians. Rains met her eyes. Guardians only exist when someone needs protecting. The galaxy's running out of that kind of mercy. Above them, the ocean split briefly as a colossal human starship ascended through the surface, scattering waves in all directions. Its hull bore no weapons, only the symbol of the continuum. Its engines glowed with pale, controlled fury. It wasn't leaving Earth to invade, it was leaving to oversee. Vorkal watched wordless as its light vanished into the upper atmosphere. What happens now? Rains gave her final answer, simple and unshakable. Now the galaxy decides if it wants to evolve or disappear. And as Earth's horizon glowed against the stars, it was no longer a small, fragile world. It was a mirror, reflecting back everything the universe had refused to learn. Humanity had transcended survival. They had become the standard by which existence itself would be measured. For the first time in his life, Vorkal understood why fear and respect were often the same thing.